All right, everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. You ready for another one? Today, we're tackling something that's a must-know for our UPSC folks out there.
Definitely a fan favorite in the exams.
But honestly, it's just plain fascinating. Even if you're, anyone who's ever looked at a map of India and wondered, how did this all come to be? We're talking about how states and union territories in India came about.
The whole evolution of it.
Yep, the whole shebang.
And, it's not as simple as you'd think.
Definitely not.
This idea of India being, and get this, an indestructible union of destructible states.
Okay, wait, what?
It's a bit of a head-scratcher, right? How can something be indestructible? A-N-D destructible.
Well, it's like one of those riddles, The more you think about it, the less it makes sense.
Exactly. So to really get this, we have to rewind a bit. Back to pre-independence India.
Way back.
Yeah.
Set the scene for us. What was going on back then?
All right, so picture this. India wasn't one big happy nation just yet.
Yes.
You had these British provinces.
Under direct British rule.
Yep, those were like their puzzle pieces already in place. But then you also had all these princely states.
Oh, right. I forgot about those.
Each with its own ruler, its own little kingdom.
So it's like two different puzzle games happening at the same time.
Exactly. Adds a whole layer of complexity.
And then, boom, 1947, independence. And with it, the Indian Independence Act. What happened to all those princely states with this new act?
Well, the act essentially gave them a choice. Join India, join Pakistan, or just stay independent.
Sounds simple enough.
You'd think so, right? But it was anything but simple. You had cases like Hyderabad, massive princely state smack dab in the middle of India.
Strategically important, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. And they were hesitant, didn't want to join either dominion. Then there's Junagadh. Geographically, it was closer to India, but the ruler, he wanted Pakistan.
Seriously?
Yep. And then Kashmir, Kashmir is a whole other can of worms.
We might need a whole separate deep dive for that one.
You got that right.
So much drama right from the start. It's amazing India even became one unified nation with all this going on.
It really is. And that's where the Indian Constitution swoops in, especially those first few articles 1 to 4.
Okay, the nitty-gritty legal stuff.
It's like the foundation. Lays out the ground rules for the whole union and its territories.
Right, the framework.
Speaking of Article 1, there's something I always found interesting. It says Union of States, not Federation of States.
Yeah, why is that?
It seems like a small detail, right?
Yeah, but I bet there's a reason.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the guy who basically wrote the Constitution.
The mastermind.
Exactly. He specifically chose Union of States to highlight that India's federation, it wasn't formed by some agreement between states.
Like how the United States was.
You got it.
So the states couldn't just, decide to leave whenever they wanted.
Precisely. That's the whole point. Union makes it clear this thing's indestructible. It's one nation. States are there for administrative reasons, not because they have some inherent right to just poof, disappear.
I see. So it's about solidifying that unity.
Exactly. No room for breaking away.
Okay. Starting to get this indestructible union idea now.
Yeah.
But wait, we see new states being formed even after independence. How does that fit in?
Good question. That's where Article 3 comes in. This one gives the parliament, the big legislative body of India,
The lawmakers.
the power to redraw the lines, so to speak. Think of it like they have this magic eraser and a marker.
Okay, I like this analogy.
They can create new states, tweak the boundaries, even change names if they need to.
Wow, so the parliament really has a hand in shaping India's map.
For sure. But they can't just go wild.
There's got to be some rules, some limits.
Exactly. Article 3, it clearly states that any bill proposing these kinds of changes needs the president's okay, like a stamp of approval.
A final check.
But even before that, the president has to chat with the state legislature that's going to be affected by the change.
So it's not just a top-down decision.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's a process, a whole lot of back and forth.
Makes sense. Checks and balances and all that.
You got it. It's a collaboration between the parliament, the president, and even the state legislatures get a say.
But how does this whole system compare to other federal systems, around the world?
Good question. If we look at the U.S., their indestructible union of indestructible states.
A mouthful.
It's a bit different. In India, the union holds more power than individual states.
Interesting. More centralized power.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Even though the parliament ultimately has the power to change things, the push for new states, it often comes from the people themselves.
From the ground up.
Exactly. It's about identity, culture, language, all those things bubbling up. This need to be recognized, to have a voice, a place on the map.
It's more than just lines on a map.
Yeah.
Right? It's about identity.
Exactly. And after independence, that demand for states based on language, it really took off.
People finding their voice.
Absolutely. Imagine the passion, the protests, the sheer determination.
It's almost like a force of nature.
And, this whole movement, it's a classic topic in the UPSC exams, understanding the social and cultural forces at play.
So it wasn't just a matter of, okay, everyone who speaks this language, you get a state.
If only it were that simple.
Right. Because India, it's incredibly diverse.
You got it. And that's where things get interesting. So in 1953, they set up this thing called the Fazl Ali Commission.
The Fazl Ali Commission.
Yep. Their job was to figure this whole state reorganization thing out.
Okay, the experts.
And they quickly realized one language, one state, it just wasn't going to cut it.
Why not? On the surface, it seems like a pretty neat solution.
It does, doesn't it? But think about it. What about regions with multiple languages spoken? What about those cultural ties that go beyond language?
Okay, yeah, I see the problem.
Forcing that one language, one state thing, it could actually cause more problems, more divisions.
Backfired spectacularly.
Exactly. So they had to consider all these other things, finances, administrative feasibility. Could this actually work on a practical level?
Makes sense. Got to be realistic.
And most importantly, they had to think about the people.
At the heart of it all.
Would this really benefit them? Would it create a better life? That was the ultimate question.
So the Fazl Ali Commission, were they the first ones to tackle this whole language and state thing?
Actually, no. Before them, there was the Dar Commission in 48 and the JVP Committee in 49.
Okay, so this issue had been brewing for a while.
Oh, yeah. It was a hot topic. But the Fazl Ali Commission, they really dug deep.
They went all in.
And they said, look, we need a more holistic approach. Language is important, but it's not the only thing.
Gotcha. So they were looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly. They recommended reorganizing states based on all these different factors, not just language.
So one language, one state, it was officially rejected.
Yeah, out the window.
Wow, that's a big decision. I mean, it seemed like such a simple solution.
You'd think so, right? But India is just too complex for simple solutions.
I guess that's what makes it so fascinating.
Exactly. And the story doesn't end there. Even after the Fazl Ali Commission did their thing, India's map kept evolving.
Always changing.
It's like a living, breathing thing.
Reflecting the changing needs of the people.
Precisely. Take the birth of Maharashtra and Gujarat in 1960, for example.
Ah, yes. The division of Bombay State.
A classic case of language and identity reshaping the map.
And then there's Goa. Such a unique history.
Right. Centuries under Portuguese rule, then it becomes part of India in 61.
A late addition to the party.
It was a union territory at first, then finally got full statehood in 87.
It's like its own little journey.
Shows how India can integrate all these different territories, cultures, histories.
It's pretty impressive when you think about it.
It really is. And speaking of unique journeys, we can't forget Sikkim.
Oh, yeah. Sikkim. Protectorate, then associate state, then finally a full-fledged state in 75.
Like a microcosm of India's own evolution, wouldn't you say?
It's like a mini India story.
Ouch.
And it shows how flexible India's federal structure is.
Absolutely. Each state, each territory, it has its own story to tell, its own path.
Now let's shift gears a bit and head up north to the northeast. In 1972, Manipur, Tripura, and Meghalaya, they all became states.
The Northeast, it's like a whole other world. So much diversity packed into one region.
A melting pot of cultures.
And granting them statehood, it was about recognizing those unique identities, those aspirations.
Giving them a voice.
Exactly. And it was also about bringing administration closer to the people, addressing their specific needs.
Tailoring governance to the local context.
You got it.
It's like a giant, ever-evolving puzzle.
But instead of those static pieces, you've got these dynamic regions, each with its own shape, its own color, constantly shifting.
And then there's Punjab, a state with its own complex story.
Absolutely. The demand for a separate Sikh homeland, that led to its reorganization in 66.
Creating Haryana and the Union Territory of Chandigarh.
Religion, culture, politics, it all comes together in Punjab's story.
It's a reminder that language isn't the only factor driving these changes.
Exactly. And then in 2000, bam, 3 more states, Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, and Jharkhand.
Another wave of change.
Carved out of larger states, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar.
Okay, so why these 3? What was the reasoning behind these new states?
It was all about improving governance, tackling those regional disparities.
Making sure everyone has a fair shot.
Exactly. It's this constant balancing act in India, unity and regional aspirations.
Finding that sweet spot.
And just when you think things are settling down, boom, Telangana enters the scene in